Didn't you check your bag, Erica? You don't have a passport anymore. The whisper hit my ear just as the Miami International Airport security alarm screamed. Two TSA agents tore open my carry-on bag. Instead of clothes, they yanked out a taped brick of stolen cash, a stack of fake identification cards, and a heavy, sealed package of illegal contraband. My father, Derek, stepped back. He threw his arms around his new wife, Paige. His face twisted into a mask of perfect, agonizing grief. She has had substance issues for years. Officer, he shouted over the blaring sirens. We tried to help her. Paige immediately shoved a thick folder of forged rehab records into the nearest cop's hands. They planned this. I had exactly 48 hours to claim a $5 million inheritance in person. If I missed the deadline, the money defaulted to my father. Metal handcuffs bit into my wrists. Officers dragged me through the terminal. Hundreds of passengers stopped and stared. Judgment burned in their eyes. The silence of the crowd was suffocating. Just before the police shoved me toward the exit, Derek leaned in close. His breath brushed my cheek. You only need to rot in there for 2 days. The stainless steel bench drained the heat right out of my bones. I stared at the cracked concrete floor, tracking a single droplet of condensation rolling down the wall. At 29 years old, I spent my entire adult life as a paralegal, scrubbing away the filthy consequences of other people's catastrophic mistakes. I drafted ironclad contracts. I found the hidden loopholes. I was the reliable family fixer. Now, I sat in a freezing federal holding cell, running the brutal timeline in my head. The trust fund matured at noon on Friday. $5 million. If the primary beneficiary missed the in-person signing, the secondary heir automatically took control. Derek knew the legal bylaws perfectly. He needed me caged and paralyzed by the justice system just long enough to legally drain the accounts dry. 3 years ago, he sat on my worn living room sofa. His hands shook violently against his knees. Tears streamed down his red, puffy face as he begged me to cover his overdue rent. He swore the local bookies were going to shatter his kneecaps. He promised he would change his life. I emptied my entire savings account that afternoon. He cried then, just like he pretended to cry to the cops at the checkpoint today. He weaponized my empathy. He thought my shock on that airport floor was total defeat. He forgot exactly who he was dealing with. He forgot I am the one who reads the fine print. The heavy steel door slammed open, ripping me out of my thoughts. It was not a tired public defender standing in the hallway. Trevor Foster stepped into the harsh fluorescent light. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than my car, carrying an aura of absolute authority. Trevor ran a high-end financial investigation firm that operated in the deep, murky gray areas of the law. A year ago, I found a buried zoning clause that kept his top associate out of a federal penitentiary. He owed me a massive debt. He tossed a heavy wool coat onto my lap. He just nodded toward the exit. The armed guards simply stepped back and lowered their eyes. We walked straight out the front doors into the blinding Miami sun. The tinted windows of his black SUV blocked out the world. Trevor slid a thin tablet across the leather center console. One tap on the screen told the entire story. Crisp parking garage and security footage played out in high definition. Paige popped the trunk of my rental car, unzipped my carry-on, and shoved the packages deep inside. Trevor put the vehicle in drive. His voice was deadpan. He told me he already ran the serial numbers on the cash. It was completely unregistered. Stolen straight out of Derek's own company's safe 3 days prior. My family handed me a felony using their own stolen money. Trevor looked at me through the rearview mirror. He asked if I wanted him to drop the evidence on a detective's desk right now. The police would arrest them both by dinner. I gripped the edges of the tablet until my knuckles turned white. My chest tightened, but a cold, sharp clarity washed over my brain. Handing them to the cops was too quick. A standard arrest gave Derek a chance to play the victim again, to hire flashy defense attorneys, to drag my professional name through the mud in a messy public trial. I shook my head. I told Trevor to keep the files completely buried. I wanted Derek to legally sign away his own life. I went completely dark. I dropped my cell phone down a storm drain on Biscayne Boulevard and vanished. Let them pop the expensive champagne. Let them celebrate my destruction. Let them truly believe I was shivering on a concrete slab, waiting for a public defender who would never come. From a high-backed leather chair in Trevor's secure downtown office, the surveillance feeds played across the massive monitors. Derek was sweating through his expensive golf shirt. The audio feed crackled loudly as he paced his marble living room. He screamed into his phone, begging his bookies for a 24-hour extension. He promised them a massive, guaranteed payday by tomorrow evening. He swore on his life the inheritance was locked down. The $5 million was his only lifeline to keep the loan sharks from shattering his kneecaps. His frantic desperation radiated through the screen like a foul odor. Trevor leaned over the mahogany conference table. He picked up a sleek desk phone and dialed Derek's number. He introduced himself as the director of a boutique, aggressive lending firm. He offered a miraculous, same-day bridge loan to clear out every single one of Derek's dangerous underworld debts. Derek choked on his own breath. He practically wept with pure gratitude. The tension melted right out of his shoulders on the live video feed. But Trevor let the dead air stretch. He demanded ironclad collateral before wiring a single dime. He demanded the $5 million trust fund. Derek stammered. He frantically explained the trust was technically in his daughter's name. Trevor's corporate attorney, sitting right next to us on speakerphone, pushed the blade in deeper. The lawyer stated they could legally bypass the primary beneficiary, but it required a sworn federal affidavit. Derek had to sign a government document formally declaring me mentally incapacitated and permanently incarcerated. He had to claim sole emergency power of attorney under penalty of perjury. The lawyer laid out the brutal backup terms. If the trust got tied up in probate court, the firm would automatically seize Derek's sprawling estate and his entire company equity as secondary collateral. Signing that paper meant committing a massive federal crime, carrying a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence. I held my breath. My eyes locked onto the high-definition screen. A tiny, pathetic part of me waited for a flicker of paternal guilt. I waited for a split second of hesitation from the man whose blood ran in my veins. I will sign whatever you need. Derek's voice was sharp, greedy, completely devoid of remorse. He put every single asset he owned on the line without a flinch. He told the lawyer my fictional addiction was a devastating family tragedy, but business was business. He actually chuckled before disconnecting the line. The heavy silence in the office pressed against my eardrums. I leaned back in the chair. The leather creaked loud in the quiet room. The last shred of the loyal, dutiful daughter died right there. My father just eagerly wrapped the rope around his own neck. He built the gallows completely from scratch. Tomorrow morning, I would gladly pull the lever. The heavy mahogany doors of the Palm Beach lending office remained shut. I watched the live video feed from the adjacent room. Derek sat at the massive polished table, bouncing his knee with giddy excitement. Paige rested her hand on his shoulder, playing the supportive wife. A court-appointed notary slid the thick federal affidavit across the wood. Derek grabbed the gold pen. He flashed a brilliant, blinding smile. He spun a tragic lie about his daughter wasting her life away in a dirty jail cell. He scrawled his signature right on the dotted line. He formally declared me mentally incompetent under penalty of perjury. He sealed his own fate. I pushed the doors open. Trevor stepped in right behind me, flanked by a federal investigator and the estate's senior trust attorney. Derek dropped the pen, The blood drained completely from his face. Paige gasped, taking 2 rapid steps backward. I walked straight up to the table. I slammed my real United States passport right on top of his forged affidavit. I leaned forward, resting my knuckles on the cold mahogany. The estate lawyer cleared my inheritance at 8 o'clock this morning. $5 million sat safely in my private offshore account. The document Derek just signed did not secure a bridge loan. It functioned as a verified, notarized confession to federal wire fraud. Derek crumbled. He fell to his knees right there on the expensive rug. Tears poured down his cheeks as he grabbed the hem of my jacket. He begged for mercy. He invoked the sacred bond of family. He swore he only did it to save our home. I stepped back, pulling my jacket out of his grip. I stared down at him with dead, empty eyes. His pathetic weeping stopped instantly. The crying father vanished. A vicious, snarling beast took his place. He shot up from the floor, veins bulging in his neck, screaming vile insults. He blamed my selfishness for ruining his entire life. He showed his true face. I just smiled. The federal agent stepped forward, dropping a thick stack of printed transcripts on the table. They extracted Paige's deleted messages from the cloud. She never planned to share a single dime. She held a one-way first-class ticket to South America and a hidden offshore account entirely in her name. She planned to frame Derek as the sole mastermind behind the airport stunt, trade her testimony for full immunity, and vanish with the cash. Derek whipped around, staring at the woman he destroyed my life for. Utter betrayal carved deep lines into his forehead. His empire was dust. Paige collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands, weeping loudly. I turned my back to leave. Leather squeaked sharply. Paige lunged. She snatched a heavy, solid brass eagle statue off the desk and swung it straight at the back of my skull. Trevor moved in a blur. He grabbed her wrist mid-air and slammed her brutally onto the table. The brass eagle slipped from her fingers. It crashed onto the marble floor. The heavy metal base shattered into jagged pieces. A small black hard drive rolled out of the hollow cavity. Derek choked on his own spit. His eyes bulged out of his skull. Sweat poured down his face in thick sheets. Pure, unadulterated terror paralyzed his entire body. That statue sat on his office desk for a decade. The feds picked up the drive. It held the complete blueprints of his past crimes. He used this exact fake addiction scheme to siphon accounts from 3 other elderly relatives. I was simply the first victim to survive the trap. Heavy steel handcuffs ratcheted shut around Derek's wrists. The metallic clicks echoed off the marble walls. Sharp and agonizingly final. 2 massive federal agents hauled him off the floor by his armpits. His expensive designer golf shirt was completely soaked in cold sweat. Clinging to his violently shaking frame. They grabbed Paige next. Her luxury heels scraped uselessly against the expensive rug as the officers dragged her toward the heavy mahogany doors. She thrashed her shoulders, spitting venom at the agents, but they simply yanked her chains tighter. They shoved the 2 of them out into the bright, sprawling hallway. I followed 2 steps behind them. The agents marched my father and my stepmother straight through the exact center of the massive glass-walled lobby. It was the absolute peak of the business day. Dozens of wealthy executives, powerful investors, and armed security guards froze dead in their tracks. The frantic, arrogant hum of the Palm Beach financial district died instantly. The silence was deafening. It perfectly mirrored the suffocating quiet of the airport terminal, but this time, the burning public judgment landed exactly where it belonged. Derek stumbled. He dragged his expensive leather shoes across the polished tile, desperately trying to hide his face behind his shoulder. These onlookers were his peers. These were the country club elites he spent his entire miserable life trying to impress and emulate. Now, They watched him get paraded out of the building like a common street thief. Whispers started to ripple through the crowd, slicing through his fragile ego. The absolute humiliation crushed the remaining breath straight out of his lungs. Paige kept her head completely down, letting her blonde hair hide her ruined makeup, finally stripped of her arrogant armor. Right at the revolving glass exit doors, Derek dug his heels into the mat. He wrenched his neck around, frantically searching the silent crowd until his bloodshot eyes locked directly onto mine. The raging beast was completely gone. The pathetic, weeping father was gone. Only a terrified, broken, and hollow old man remained. He searched my face for a single ounce of pity. He begged for a magical lifeline with his wet eyes, hoping the obedient, trauma-bonded daughter would suddenly rush forward to save him. I planted my feet firmly on the tile. I gave him one slow, freezing nod of absolute dismissal. I turned my back to him. The heavy glass doors spun. The sweltering Florida heat swallowed him whole. I stepped out onto the sun-baked concrete steps a few minutes later. Trevor stood near the curb, casually leaning against the tinted door of his black SUV. He adjusted his silk tie in the blinding midday sun. We stood there together in the brutal heat, listening to the wailing police sirens fading deep into the city streets. No forced hugs, no dramatic Hollywood romance. We were simply two apex predators who just successfully executed a flawless, ruthless hunt. The massive debt between us was officially settled in full. He offered a crisp, single nod of deep mutual respect. I returned the exact same gesture. He slipped into the back of his heavily armored vehicle and vanished into the thick coastal traffic. I stood completely alone on the busy sidewalk. My cell phone vibrated deep in my pocket, confirming the massive offshore wire transfer. $5 million sat untouched and secure in my private account. I took a massive, deep breath of the salty ocean air. For the very first time in 29 years, my shoulders carried zero weight. The gavel dropped exactly 4 months later. The sound echoed through the oak-paneled courtroom, sharp and absolute. The federal judge handed Derek a 12-year sentence in a maximum security penitentiary for wire fraud, perjury, and the devastating cascade of historical elder abuse charges unearthed from that hidden hard drive. The court ordered complete asset forfeiture and mandatory restitution totaling $2,400,000. Justice stripped him bare. His sprawling Palm Beach estate went straight to the auction block. The bank seized it, selling the marble floors and vaulted ceilings to the highest bidder in less than 20 minutes. Tow trucks dragged his imported luxury cars right out of the driveway. Paige took a blind plea deal to save her own skin. The judge handed her 6 years in state prison without the possibility of early parole. The fallout ripped through their elite social circles like a Category 5 hurricane. The country club formally revoked their memberships before the evening news even aired their booking photos. Neighbors who used to drink Derek's expensive imported wine suddenly crossed the street to avoid walking past his foreclosed gates. Former business partners deleted his phone number. His entire legacy evaporated into absolute disgrace. He left behind nothing but a loud, pathetic cautionary tale of boundless greed. 8 months passed. A thin, cheap manila envelope arrived in my locked mailbox. It carried a smeared federal prison stamp. The messy, frantic handwriting belonged to Derek. He filled 3 cramped pages with desperate, rambling excuses. He claimed a severe gambling addiction clouded his mind. He blamed the crushing pressure of his failing business. He played the ultimate victim card, writing in bold, underlined letters that he remained my father and loved me deeply. He begged me to contact a high-powered appeals lawyer on his behalf, offering a sliver of a non-existent family inheritance as payment. A year ago, reading those manipulative words would trigger a crippling panic attack. My chest would tighten, My hands would shake uncontrollably. I would lose 3 nights of sleep trying to fix his unfixable reality. Today, my pulse remained completely steady. My breathing stayed perfectly even. I folded the pages neatly in half. I dropped the entire envelope directly into the humming paper shredder. The steel blades chewed his hollow apologies into unrecognizable confetti. I poured myself a fresh cup of dark roast coffee. I walked out onto my back porch and breathed in the crisp morning air. Sunlight warmed the wooden deck beneath my feet. I sat in a heavy wicker chair, listening to the ocean waves crash against the shoreline. My life looks entirely different now. The relentless, suffocating chaos is completely gone. I surround myself with a chosen family. I spend my weekends with brilliant, grounded friends who never ask me to clean up their catastrophic messes. We share slow dinners, loud laughter, and genuine respect. They value my presence, not my utility. My phone never rings at 3 in the morning with a manufactured crisis. No one demands my bank account routing numbers to fix a lethal mistake. The absolute silence in my home is a luxurious, heavy blanket. Peace is no longer a temporary pause between family disasters. Peace is my permanent address. Let us talk about the brutal reality of the family fixer. Toxic abusers operate on a massive, fundamental miscalculation. Narcissists mistake trauma-bonded obedience for sheer stupidity. They groom you from childhood to absorb their shockwaves. They train you to believe your only value on this earth is your ability to carry their heavy, rotting baggage. People like Derek build their entire hollow existence on the backs of the competent. Parasites like Paige attach themselves to the chaos, constantly feeding off the destruction of others. They drain your energy, your finances, and your sanity, wearing your fierce loyalty like a bulletproof vest. But their arrogance always blinds them. They forget that forcing you to survive their constant warfare transforms you into a seasoned, hardened soldier. If you are listening to this, and you recognize that heavy, exhausting weight in your own chest, you must memorize 3 absolute rules of survival. Rule number 1: blood does not make you family, loyalty does. Society pushes a toxic, relentless narrative demanding unconditional forgiveness simply because someone shares your DNA. That is a dangerous lie. Cutting off a toxic parent or a parasitic sibling is not a moral failing, it is a biological survival imperative. You hold every right to walk away from the people actively poisoning your water supply. Rule number 2: you must weaponize your competence. If you spend your entire life being the smart, reliable, hyper-vigilant anchor for ungrateful people, you possess an incredible arsenal. Stop using your brilliant analytical mind to build safety nets for your abusers. Turn those exact skills inward. Use your sharp instincts and your meticulous attention to detail to construct an impenetrable fortress around your own life. Protect yourself with the exact same ferocity you use to protect them. Rule number 3: master the silent trap. The ultimate revenge requires 0 screaming matches. It requires 0 desperate arguments trying to prove your worth to someone committed to misunderstanding you. The most devastating counterattack is complete withdrawal. Step off the battlefield. Let greedy, entitled people swing their swords at empty air. When you stop shielding them from the consequences of their own actions, their massive egos will inevitably crush them. Derek did not go to federal prison because I fabricated a complex lie. He went to prison because I simply stepped out of his way and allowed him to sign his true name to his own destruction. Have you ever been the safety net for someone who is actively cutting your ropes? What will it take for you to finally step out of the way and let them fall? Tell me your story in the comments.